Okay, we still have some participants joining, but I guess we can start with the we can smoothly start, and some more people will join us on the way. So I'll just give the floor to our host, MEP Alicia Holmes.
Thank you, Christina, and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the SEARICA Intergroup, I want to thank all the participants in this webinar, as well as the people who has connected to listen to them, and especially to the SEARICA team who have been organizing this event that has been doing a great job. Going to the point in these opening remarks about the topic that we will talk today, I think that when we talk about the European Green Deal, most of the people can think of the transition to renewable energies, the electrification of mobility. We think of creating jobs for the transition to be socially fair. We also think of more sustainable farming techniques, of renovation of our buildings to make them greener and more efficient. But sometimes we forget about the key area of action for the Green Deal. It's something that surrounds us, something vital for our planet, that is the sea and that is the ocean. Maybe because I'm from an island, I really feel the importance of protecting our seas and oceans and their biodiversity. I'm sure that many of you also come from coastal regions, but here, well, in Brussels or in other European capitals, sometimes it's difficult to put the ocean into the agenda. So we are very fortunate to have groups like the Conference on Peripheral and Maritime Regions or the same SEARICA Intergroup to insist on the vitality of the ocean. And of course, nothing would be possible without the hundreds of professionals who dedicate every day of their lives in shaping the EU policies on oceans. So I'm really thankful to them for their work. We have many of them today among us, and we will speak about ocean observation. If we want the European ocean policies to be effective, we need grounded knowledge on ocean with common parameters among member states. And this is what the European Commission is planning with a legislative initiative which aims to achieve a common EU approach for studying what the ocean is telling us, measuring it, and using the data for different purposes. It will propose joint planning of observation activities and the framework for collaboration on a national EU scale. So I think is a good proposal that hopefully we will see soon. So to discuss the state of ocean observation in the European Union, we have among us the Director General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries of the European Commission, Charlina Vitcheva. Thanks a lot to join us today. Director General Vitcheva will give the keynote speech of the event, but before that, my colleague MEP Will Ninisto, who's also a member of the SEARICA Intergroup, wants to introduce some opening remarks. So Will, I give you the floor with a lot of illusion. So.
Okay, I can start straight from here. Good afternoon, everybody, from my side as well. I'm Will Ninisto and also a member of the SEARICA group, and a pleasure for me also to be part of this event. Obviously, if we think about what's happening now with space exploration, and there's going exploration ongoing in Mars. Sometimes we forget that there's actually the ocean around us in our own planet that still has a lot left to be explored and observed for us to know the full impact of humanity's effect on our planet. The seas have kind of like been digesting a lot of the changes that humanity and its use of natural resources, its burning of fossil fuels, how it has affected our planet. A lot of the change is happening in our oceans, and it's important that we, as European Union, give greater focus to ocean observation for us to fully grasp our effect on nature. So, as a former Minister of the Environment in Finland, I have worked a lot with especially nutrient recycling and related issues when it comes to the Baltic Sea. And we funded a lot of research also on underwater ecological conditions in the Baltic Sea coast areas around Finland in the last 10 years. And we realized with that research project funded by the ministry that there was a lot left to be explored also in a coastal area in a country like Finland. And I think that example just shows that we have a lot of knowledge to get elsewhere, also when we go to the deeper oceans, about the full impact of humanity and also about the biodiversity itself that can be found in these areas. And my comments here for the start of this event now focus also more on my work as a shadow rapporteur for the Greens for the European Parliament's own initiative report on EU's biodiversity strategy for 2030. So my focus now will be to give some input on how ocean observation can and should support our biodiversity targets. So therefore, if we look at the scale of challenges from the environmental viewpoint, any economic use of oceans has to be in line with our biodiversity commitments and protecting the biodiversity of our planet and seas. And today, only 3% of land and less than 1% of marine areas are strictly protected in the EU. The European Commission has stated its goal of increasing the number to at least 10% of EU land and EU sea areas that should be strictly protected, and 30% that should be protected by less strict measures by 2030. So the goal is at a high level, and the European Parliament has already stated its support for these targets. And obviously this has a link also with the global biodiversity negotiations ongoing and the International Biodiversity COP meeting taking place later this year in Kunming in China. So we should have similar goals in Europe, which we then also push to the global level. And in the Parliament's own discussions, I have tried to give more focus on the commitment that the EU has for the full recovery of marine life and calling for a halt of ocean degradation and enhancing ocean resilience and biodiversity by presenting an ambitious action plan to conserve fisheries resources and protect marine ecosystems. We need to realize that any use of fisheries and fish stocks has to be in line with the maximum sustainable yields that are in line with biodiversity protection. So there should be an ecosystem approach to fisheries management to continue to support plans to improve selectivity and the survival of non-target species as well, and to reduce the impact of fisheries on marine ecosystems, and to take into account the result of studies showing the detrimental impact that certain practices have on stocks, ocean biodiversity and marine environments by strongly limiting or prohibiting the use of such practices. Also, one question that arises is marine litter. 80% of that is land-based, and about 150 million tons of plastics have accumulated in our oceans, while up to more than 12 million tons are added every year. So there should be a swift implementation of the Circular Economy Action Plan and addressing plastic waste into the oceans. And this is also an area where ocean observation can give us more information about the necessity to act and the ways how we can address this problem. Also, I think one interesting area is the discussion about an international moratorium on deep seabed mining. This is an increasing issue on a global scale, and there should be a political agreement also globally how we relate ourselves to deep seabed mining. And there is a risk for mineral prospection and extraction in areas beyond national jurisdiction that can create problems for biodiversity, and this should from my view, go forward as a focus on a moratorium on such practices. But obviously, there's also a lot of possibilities for blue economy. We need also the oceans to be part of our solutions to a CO2 crisis that we have globally. We can produce food more in the future in our seas. So how we can make sure that we address the effects of climate change and make sure that our ocean policies are in line with the climate targets. There are also positives there that we can look at through research. One worrying signal is that the global ocean has continuously warmed since 1970 and has taken up more than 90% of the excess heat in the climate system. So this process of absorbing CO2 is already changing the surface water of oceans to become more acidic. What are the effects of this? This still remains to be seen. So a lot of questions out there, a lot of knowledge to be needed, and a lot of observation data to be collected by the European Union. And from my side, I look forward to a lively discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And well, as I said before, we will go to the keynote speech that will be made by Charlina Viceva. She is Director General from the Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, MARE, from the European Commission. So, Charlina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and I apologize. I hope that you can hear me well, because I was not able to hear almost anything. A bit more from Alicia, but from Mr. Ninis to almost nothing. So I'm sorry about that. But I'm still extremely happy to be able to greet you all today and take part in this workshop. From our point of view, from our end in DG Mare, the aim is to shed more light on the importance of ocean observation. This is a great initiative. This is one of the first things that I encountered as a real value added that we develop at European level when I came to the post of Director General. And I would also like to share some views of how we need more responsibility sharing, but also coordination of activities, both at the EU level and at national level. I would immediately like to thank SEARICA for supporting DG Mare in that. Actually, we have a very good tradition of supporting initiatives together with the European Parliament. And I want to thank you very much for this particular support that we have from you, also in organizing this event and giving us the great opportunity to share with you our preliminary results from the open consultation that we have just ended. And also, of course, to hear the interesting input on this subject from the panelists, quite renowned and people that know what they're talking about. So it is a clear value added of this workshop, and many thanks for organizing it. So if we can change the slide, please, the next one. Yes, so this slide concentrates on the Green Deal, and actually the Green Deal in a nutshell is the Commission's answer to the existential threats of climate change and environmental degradation. You see on top of the slide the biodiversity loss. These are the top existential threats that we are encountering. And with the Green Deal, the Commission is trying to give an answer to these threats. Of course, the Green Deal presupposes that we have to transform the way we live and the way we work in the EU. And the main idea behind is that we live and work with less environmental impact, with more circularity and more consideration of the ecosystem around us. The ocean will play an enormous role. Actually, it has a great potential, and the role it will play depends on how much we're going to tap on this potential. It is not only a source of renewable energy, it's not only a source of low carbon food, but it is a place where we can establish a new innovation-born growth, providing a lot of jobs and opportunities, and at the same time caring about environment. Uh, to achieve this tapping of potential that I'm talking about, we really need to have. I hear some voices. As always, it's always this type of environment. So in order to unlock this potential that I'm talking about, we definitely need to improve our knowledge of the ocean environment, to have the appropriate knowledge base in order to develop all the activities and understand everything that is happening there. We need knowledge of what is happening in the oceans to understand the effects of the climate change. We need to find solutions to help decarbonization in the EU and globally. It is necessary to protect also the coastal population, produce energy, high quality food. On all that, we really need much more knowledge, and the foundation of the knowledge is, of course, the capacity to observe the ocean. So ocean observation and marine observation is the key to the knowledge base that we need. So if we can go to the next slide now. Yeah, no, it is the previous one. Sorry, yeah, let me see. No, exactly. Yeah. Right. By ocean observation, actually, we mean, so to clarify the concept, by ocean observation, we mean everything that we collect on the field, at sea, including the state and dynamics of oceans, but also the status of marine organisms that inhabit the oceans. So field observations are combined in a very nice complementary way by satellite observations, and this is also necessary to understand a bit more of what happens also below the surface of the oceans. We use these observations to map also the bottom of the sea, the bottom of the ocean, and the more detailed these observations are and more detail we have, the better is actually the quality of our oceanographic predictions, the better is our ability to plan, for example, offshore activities. They are necessary to implement also properly the ecosystem-based fisheries management, which is meant to safeguard our fish stocks. So observations are key to understand the environmental impact of our activities. And here marine litter, marine plastics is a very well-known example of this impact, and why we need to manage all this effectively. I believe you get now the clear picture of what we mean by ocean observation. We need ocean observation to understand, to manage, to protect, to further develop in our seas and oceans. So it is quite a holistic approach and a multitasking behind ocean observation. So now if we can go to the next slide. Yes. What is the problem actually that we are trying to solve? In the EU, we are already collecting a very wide variety of ocean observations, and it is being done for multiple reasons. Some of the collected information comes on the request of the Commission, direct request by the Commission. Others are collected to cover, for example, monitoring obligations, let's say under environmental directives. A lot of observations happen and collection of data happens to cover monitoring needs of various public institutions and authorities, but also research institutions, and private organizations as well. Unfortunately, the majority of these observing efforts lack, on one hand, transparency, but also collective approach. Some common aspects of the problem are related to inadequate planning, to unclear priorities sometimes, but also to gaps and overlaps in responsibility. And of course, we always talk about sustainability of funding, and funding is one of the missing elements to provide a proper service with ocean observation. Often organizations are collecting ocean observation data to cover their own needs, but they are restricted by their own budget, and actually the limitation comes also from the limited infrastructure. This lack of coordination actually is leading to additional costs, and we are not capable actually without proper coordination to address effectively the observation gaps. If we can go to the next slide now. What you see on the slide are actually the inputs that we support from DG Mare in the public consultation on the issue. As I said, we have launched and finalized, the deadline expired of the public consultation on ocean observation. We have collected over more than 140 replies from research institutions. As I said, we also reached out to public authorities and also international organizations. And let's not forget the civil society, because there we have a lot of energy to tap. Civil society is extremely interested and can be very helpful in this endeavor. So what we see actually as basic input is that the problem the challenges come as a result of precarious funding, but also lack of interdisciplinary governance, which are probably two main reasons behind the difficulty in establishing a common ocean observation priority list. The stakeholders identified, of course, other reasons that contribute to the problem of pursuing more coordinated approaches and better organization. And this is very often a lack of time, lack of resources, lack of incentive, insufficient knowledge of other interested parties. In a way, we need to know who does what and for what purpose. So all these limitations that an individual stakeholder can face can be overcome if we have collectiveness in all this effort. And this leads us to the conclusion that there is a great benefit from more coordinated and collective effort in ocean observation, and that can lead us to achieve what we need, common methodologies, but also common standards that will make the results of each and every stakeholder marry together into a coherent framework. So we can go to the next slide, please, now. Right. So what is the purpose of the initiative by DG Mare? Actually, the idea here is to develop an efficient and effective EU process for planning and implementing ocean observation, really to create an order in the space, and by that reaching a higher optimization of the effort invested and the multiple use afterwards of what we have collected together. So this will allow us to really encourage and achieve the collaborations that are needed. It will enable the sharing of observation infrastructure, and it will enable us to achieve this common methodologies and common standards that will create this added value that I'm talking about. It will increase transparency and it will increase collective ownership of the whole exercise. So if we can go to the next slide. The main highlights from the public consultation. I think that there is quite high degree of consensus among the stakeholders about the value added of collective approach to ocean observation. And what we need is more coordination, more standardization, more coordination at national level, but also at sea basin level, because that makes even more sense. Sharing of assets, infrastructure, platforms, and coordination at the design phase can incur a lot of benefits afterwards in the multiple use of the results of this ocean observation. So uh, achieving greater coherence, bringing national priorities to the table at the EU level, and also engaging citizens, and making the utmost to implement new technologies in ocean observation. So there is a lot input there, and a lot of avenues for improvement, and we are still digesting the outcomes of the public consultation in order to make our work even more coherent with the expectations of our stakeholders. Let's go to the next slide. And this is actually the last substantive slide. So moving forward, what we are going to do is, first of all, listen to you. So we will reach out to a lot of stakeholders in addition to this public consultation. We will be listening to your input during this seminar, and our main goal of the whole exercise is that we bring the added value of the European level to bring a coherent effort in all the individual efforts of our stakeholders on ocean observation. I have to say that I have a number of colleagues that joined up this event. Because of the very bad sound, it's really almost ununderstandable when somebody speaks. So I'm not really capable to hear more. I'm willing to stay. I will try a bit more, but I have my colleagues also on board for any questions that you might be having, and all your input will be taken on board for the next steps in perfectioning the overall initiative we are having in Mare. Again, many thanks for everything that you're doing, European Parliament. Many thanks to all the stakeholders for their contributions, and we are all ears to listen to your input at this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Director General, for this enriching presentation about the importance of the ocean observation and how it can be improved, and all the feedback that you have been working with. I have been told that you have to leave soon, but I'm sure that you have a really busy agenda also. But members of your team will stay to answer questions in the end of the event. So if someone of the participants has any question for Ms. Bicheva, do not hesitate to do it, because there will be people of her team for answering these questions. So now moving to the panel, sharing responsibility, a coherent approach to European ocean observation. We will have a few experts and speakers that I'm quite sure that we all will learn a lot from them. So I will start with Mr. John Smith, Chair of ICES Science Committee, International Council for the Exploration of the Sea. So Mr. Schmidt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation for SEARICA to inviting me and giving me the opportunity to have a small intervention in the panel. And thank you very much also to the Director General for the introduction and the members of the Parliament. And I have to say that there was no lack of challenges, so no pressure. And it was also interesting to see when the challenges were listed, and specifically in the last slide of the Director General, I actually thought, maybe my presentation is not that bad to be the first one, because I think that it can show that ICES is a kind of a good practice example. So what I want to do in the next 5 minutes is to give you a short perspective on ocean observation and do that, give you a bit of context on ICES, which is an intergovernmental organization with over a century of integrated observation experience. So I'm running you quickly through the presentation. So very briefly on ICES, it is an intergovernmental organization with 20 member countries, but we have a wide scientific network of over 6,000 experts that are coming from 60 member countries, working in over 150 expert groups. Why is that important? It is important because there's a lot of expertise in the network that we rely on. And ICES as an organization has the mandate to give advice to the European Commission as well as the member countries in relation to a lot of marine-related issues. Of course, fisheries is the most well-known area we are giving advice on. But we are also giving advice on other issues, including, for example, vulnerable marine ecosystems and others. And we have been also involved, of course, in contributing to the descriptors of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. However, it is important to realize that ICES is not an EU intergovernmental organization, but we do have European Union countries as member countries, but we are spanning across and beyond. So why is that important? It's important because ICES is a platform to develop sampling methods and protocols. We're doing that through the expert groups, and they are developing what we call the series of ICES survey protocols, the SISPs. They are peer-reviewed, and they form the basis of the sampling that has been done at sea, and they have been published, so you can have a look on the ICES webpage to see what we do have. We have a lot of planning groups to plan surveys across the North Atlantic and the adjacent waters. So we have a range of different survey planning groups. And as a kind of a meta group, we also have groups that are trying to develop mechanisms to have a broader uptake of data that has been collected in the wider network, and specifically for advice. And we also have a group that is specifically targeted to look into how to extend the existing surveys to become more ecosystem observation surveys. We also have a quality assurance and control system through the data governance groups that we have. These are groups that are specifically set up to control data flows that are coming into ICES and that are then being used by different groups. So we are also using data. So we are using data in stock assessment groups. We are using data in integrated ecosystem assessment groups and other science groups. And we are also having groups that are developing technology for data collection and analysis. So that is gear technology. It's also methods groups on machine learning, on omics, acoustic, and image technologies. So ICES in that sense is a platform for planning surveys and planning ocean observation. It's a platform for coordinating where the coordination cannot be done through other means. We also are a data archive. So the ICES Data Center is holding a lot of the data that is coming through. And we have memorandum of understanding with a lot of outside partners, including the AMAP from the Arctic Council, OSPA and HELCOM. And we're working, of course, very strongly together with a lot of the other bodies that will present today, or at least participate in the call, in the webinar, like EMOTNet and others. So having said that, as we are also using the data through using it in stock advice, using it in ecosystem overviews, which are kind of small, concise ecosystem status reports, also in fisheries overviews, and also in the special requests that we're receiving on vulnerable marine ecosystems, bycatch and fishing impacts. We have the full kind of spectrum from data collection to data use, which means that there's also internal mechanisms of feedback from the data use to the data collectors. And I think this is important also with respect to this initiative. So some thoughts on the initiative from that background perspective of ICES. I think it's, and this also has been shown through the responses that you got through the open consultation, that a lot of the respondents talked about harmonization of data collection, that it's important to see which variables need to be collected, what is the spatial resolution and the temporal resolution of the collection. But I think it's also important to talk about the precision and accuracy. And it's important to realize that, of course, surveys and ocean observation is dedicated to a very specific purpose and a specific objective, and therefore that needs to be preserved, even though the data that is being collected should also be used more broadly. It was really interesting because it said that there's 1.5 billion euros spent a year on ocean observation, some funded by the EU, some to meet EU legislation. So the objectives, of course, it has been said that it should reach across the European level objectives like the policies and the directives, but also the national priorities. And therefore, it's important to see where these national priorities actually match common objectives. We talk about coordination and planning, and I think here it is really important that there's not only the national implementation that is supported through whatever will be decided, if it's a directive or whatever else is being decided on, but to also identify the mechanisms of coordination and planning. When talking about increasing automation, and maybe going even close to near real-time data capturing, it is important to realize that there is, of course, the need to adapt some of the monitoring and surveys, but also to think about stability, because there's always a trade-off in changing the observations and also keep some stability in the ocean observations. It's important to think about big data, machine learning, and other technologies to deal with the huge amount of data. We do have a lot of specialized organizations that are already thinking quite deeply on that. So I'm relatively confident that this will be relatively well taken care of. But it's also important to use already existing standards and not develop too many new ones where you already have standards that work well. You need to have a quality assurance and control. So if you have dispersed data streams, there needs to be a mechanism to have this quality assurance and control so that the data is really comparable across different collections. And then, of course, the support of existing structures. I think that a lot of the people that come after me and that also attend the webinar will agree that we already have a lot of existing structures that could be supported and strengthened. And then, again, the focus on adaptation versus stability. So with that, I think I want to close my intervention and then open for discussions later after the panel. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Smith, for your intervention. I think it was quite interesting, and for sure, later on, if someone has any question for him, you can manage to do it during the Q&A session. Now we move to MET Catherine Chabot. She is Vice Chair of the SEARICA Intergroup for Climate and Governance. As I know, she will have to leave shortly before the end of the panel. So I give you anyway, I think that since our emails are officially, you can find them in our websites, in the website of the European Parliament. So if someone has any question for you, maybe he or she can directly send you an email and you can answer them directly. So Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Do you hear me? Yeah, great. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm glad to be with you on this very important topic and with the SEARICA Intergroup I'm part of. The ocean is our common good. Its preservation is our collective responsibility. This is why its observation must no longer be sector-based and must become more inclusive. I can attest this to you through my two hats as a sailor and as a member of the European Parliament. First of all, I can give you my testimony as a sailor. We need multiplicity of actors for in situ cooperation, researchers, fishermen, etc. In addition to scientists, I also believe in participatory science and support from the private sector. For example, when infrastructures are installed at sea, there are opportunities to install sensors. And I also think about the Tara Foundation, created and supported by ANISB in France, that is just right now in the Magellan Strait to explore the microbiome. But another actor must not be forgotten, the sailors. Indeed, in more than 30 years of sailing, I have become aware of the fragility of our seas and the ocean. And I have also become aware that sailors are actively involved in observing them. I have personally participated in several launches of oceanographic beacons. And it has been the same this year with, you know, the Vendée Globe Challenge race around the world, and more with the implementation of sensors in several boats, like the one of the German skipper Boris Herrmann. And all the fleet had a partnership with the International Oceanographic Commission. You've got also a lot of sailing boats cruising around the world who participate to the Plankton Planet project. They collect DNA thanks to a very simple protocol that I experienced 3 years ago in Greenland. And it's very funny for a sailor to participate to the science too. Now, secondly, as a member of the European Parliament, the question of today resonates with my mandate, which is based on 4 major issues related to the ocean. First of all, more knowledge. Secondly, more preservation. Third, a more sustainable blue economy. And fourth, a better governance for the ocean. First of all, it's necessary today to have a better knowledge of the sea and also on its impact. We must therefore promote European and even international cooperation, the means for this knowledge, and mobilize all the actors. Moreover, we need in situ and space observation. We must therefore support the marine component of the European Copernicus program. I also expect a lot from the Starfish mission led by Pascal Lamy and Geneviève Pons, the Starfish mission. Secondly, regarding the preservation, marine protected areas are opportunities to develop more science with scientists, but also with local communities. Increase MPAs to 30% of the maritime area, as the European Parliament asked for, will strengthen observation. Regarding climate ambition, this is another topic I'm very interested on. We had a meeting yesterday with on the blue carbon with some experts in the climate ambition, and we realized that there is a lack of knowledge, data on the blue carbon at the EU level. So if we want to put the blue carbon inside the climate negotiation, we need cooperation on data and on knowledge. Third, regarding the blue economy, the development of the maritime economy must be part of the truly sustainable development approach. Yesterday, for example, we voted my initiative report on the impact of marine litter on fisheries. It was in the PECH committee. We asked for more observation, more science, more cooperation to understand what are those impacts. We don't know really them. And more cooperation to share data collection. Fourth, finally, concerning European governance, we need a much more integrated maritime policy to facilitate data sharing between agencies. And I would like to support the proposal of the Starfish mission to create an European Ocean and Water Agency, gathering all competencies that should gather all forces involved on ocean knowledge. Thus, from knowledge to governance, observation is a central and transversal issue. A better observation of the ocean would greatly benefit the growth of the blue economy, while identifying the dangerous practices inherent in its development. To conclude, I can say one thing. Today, the ocean is a common good, insufficiently observed and insufficiently regarded. You probably know that the ocean as a global common or common good, as I said, is a subject that I have been carrying for a long time. That means that the ocean is the responsibility of each one of us and all of us collectively. Thus, conserving the ocean as a common good means that we must observe it together to better safeguard it. Therefore, the European Union has a great maritime destiny, as probably everybody around this table think. It is time to design a common spyglass to observe the necessary maritime strategy that we still lack. Whether as an MEP or as a sailor, I fully support this legislative initiative of the European Commission on ocean observation to demonstrate that the European Union is drawing up a renewed and ambitious strategy for our seas and our ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. As I said, if someone has any question directly for you, maybe it's a good idea if they can send you by email. Our emails, as I said, are public, so you can find it in the webpage of the European Parliament, because I think it was quite interesting what you were explaining. So if someone has any doubt, they can reach you easily. So thanks a lot for your explanation. And now we will move to Mr. George Petihakis, Chairman of EuroGOOS, the European Global Ocean Observing System. So, George, with no more delay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alicia. Just make sure that you see my presentation. Can you confirm? Excellent. Right. Good afternoon from Greece. I'm George Petihakis, Chair of the Executive Board of Directors of EuroGOOS. And before I start, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to participate to this very interesting webinar. For those not familiar with EuroGOOS, we are an association committed to oceanography, and we function within the context of the Global Ocean Observing System, the GOOS. And we have been founded back in 1994, and today we count 44 members from 18 countries. In this short presentation, I will actually not try to show you what EuroGOOS is about. I mean, you can have a look at our webpage, but I will take the opportunity to give you an overview of what it is in the landscape today. And hopefully I will try to highlight some of the problems which we think are important and are fully related with this initiative. Now, you can see my presentation, Alice? Yes, okay. So I would like to start with a slide in which I try to map the landscape in Europe, as I said, and regarding marine observations. And although there might be elements missing, I think that we can identify three important levels today. In the top level, that of Europe, we have a number of policy instruments. We have related organizations such as Eurogus, Marine Board, the ICES. We've got the ERICS, the European Research Infrastructure, we've got projects and programs, and we've got the data aggregators. In the middle, we have the regional level, which is a very important level, as issues, problems, and requirements have a great degree of similarity within the same region, and thus cooperation not only makes sense, but we know that it can deliver in short time focused solutions and useful services to the society. This has been the driving forces behind the Eurogus regional operational oceanographic systems. If we can imagine these three levels as a pyramid, at the basement one would see the national level, where we have the numerous entities performing marine observations in the member states, feeding with the important data the levels above. Of course, without this level, all the investments and all the efforts on the levels above will mean very little. Now, if we look a little bit closer in our basement, we will identify some problems, such as competition, fragmentation, complexity, and so on, which quite often they create bottlenecks and reduce efficiency. Some of these negative characteristics are also found in the other levels, and that's why in our community 10 years ago, we saw the need of something of an umbrella, and we came up with a proposal of a European Ocean Observing System. EOS, the European Ocean Observing System vision, is to connect Europe's diverse ocean observing stakeholders and make ocean observation a public utility in Europe by strengthening coordination, strategy, and sustainability in ocean observation. EOS is not another observation network, but instead it can be seen as an umbrella framework, as I said, that will strengthen coordination and dialogue between existing systems. Major objectives are the strong coordination among Europe's diverse ocean observation and monitoring communities, a shared vision, a shared strategy, co-design, co-creation, but always putting the needs of the users at its center. I must say that EOS activities have been mainly supported by Eurogus and the Marine Board, but thanks to some EU projects lately, such as Eurosea and MIKE, we have some funds to help us in the EOS implementation. But let's have a closer look at the national level and the various entities performing marine observations, such as the operational observing systems shown here. As mentioned, there are significant negative characteristics, competition, fragmentation, and so on. And despite the efforts at the European level towards collaboration, harmonization, the picture is actually far from ideal. Just to give you an example, quite often we see that different entities in the same country performing marine observation, they compete very strongly, and basic collaboration only happens within the framework of the same European project that both entities are participating. There are also big differences between countries in terms of their policy for ocean observations, with some of them having clear priority and requirements, where in other cases priorities are less clear and often they basically following EU framework program priorities. In addition, big difference we see in terms of funding. Some member states have sustained funding and allocate significant resources with a long-term horizon, while in other cases we see underfunded systems with a project lifetime horizon of 3 to 4 years. In this context, some observing systems are much more dependent on EU funds than on national funds, and we can see a north to south and west to east gradient. Some estimations show that Europe spends approximately 1 to 1.5 billion per year on marine observations, with 90% of it coming from national funds. Although this figure might sound like a lot, we know that marine observations are very expensive. Sea is a harsh environment, which means that we need expensive material and state-of-the-art technology. And for deployment and retrieval, we need very expensive research vessels. And unfortunately, operational failures in the sea and accidents quite often mean that we lose equipment. So that despite the 1 billion spent, from a recent study, we see that only 28% of our observing systems are sustainable, while the majority operates with a very short time horizon, as I said, 3 to 4 years. At Eurogoose, we see the need to look much closer to the base of our pyramid and direct efforts there in the national systems, as appropriate actions towards integrated, sustained national systems with clear priorities and strategies will positively affect all the other levels that I showed in my pyramid with a multiplicative effect. Integrated, sustained national systems will ensure not only that each observation is used many times, but also that key observations are made at an appropriate temporal and spatial scale with a fit-for-purpose observing system. Now, in my last slide, I would like to just mention a few things about an important component of the European landscape and consequently for EOS, and this is the European research infrastructures, which are also working towards reducing fragmentation, duplication, promoting. However, today we see a very variable picture here regarding the participation. The map here, I think, is indicative with the countries participating into the ERICS. And also there is quite variability in terms of the specificities of these ERICS. Some are platform specific, some environmental specific. And although we know that for ERICS there are national commitments, sustainability in some cases is a major issue and can be a significant problem, especially as these infrastructures are associated with global networks, and I have listed few of those here, and thus they can be considered as the European contribution to global effort and initiatives. We believe thus that in addition to the national contribution, these efforts must be also supported centrally through long-term EU co-funding mechanisms. So besides the sustainability, this will also enhance participation. It will make countries join these ERICS, which will mean that the ERICS will grow and they will become more infrastructures will become available. Closing, I want to say that at Eurogoose we welcome this initiative of the European Commission towards a common European approach on ocean observation, and we strongly believe that examining carefully and choosing the best option forward, we will have a significant positive impact. And with this, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Petihati. It was such an interesting presentation. And I hope that people, if it's interesting in doing question, you can start putting it in the chat so we will have it for later on. So next speaker is Mr. Laurent Kegler, Director General, SEAM, French National Hydrographic Service. So Laurent, the floor is yours. If I pronounce it well, the name, I tried. We cannot hear you. You need to
yeah,
the speaker.
Sorry. So,
now.
Thank you, Alicia. I was just saying that you were right for the first name. For the last name, it's Kerliger, but I know it's maybe a little bit difficult. So thank you for inviting me and being part of this panel. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So can you see it?
Yes, c'est bon.
So thank you. So knowledge of the oceans, whys and hows. So why do we want to know the ocean? The answer is simple. It is because we just don't know it, whereas it covers 70% of our planet. And there are more and more reasons to want to know the ocean, to protect it, to exploit its resource, energy, fishing, minerals, of course, in a sustainable way, to commerce, to mitigate natural risk, for maritime traffic, for coastal management or to face the climate change issues. So we do not know the ocean, and this is not a lack of interest or because we did not start early. On the contrary, on November 19th, last year, we have celebrated 300 years of French hydrography. Indeed, in 1720, a repository of Navy charts and plans was created in France. This is the origin of SHAM and a testimony of a sustained effort to depict the ocean. Anyway, this early start is a chance because it gives something that money can't buy. That is the long observation series that we need, for example, to understand the sea level trend as shown on this graph, which represent 300 years of seawater level in Brest, Brittany. By the way, it might be a good idea for Europe to support an action to help rescuing these archives, which are not always preserved in good conditions. An internet portal sharing digitized historical data would definitely be useful for understanding the climate change impact on the coastline, for example. Why not dedicating some Horizon Europe future calls to this topic regarding our heritage? So now, since the ocean is so important and we started early, why is the knowledge so poor? Man walked on the moon 50 years ago, Perseverance landed on Mars last week, and we know with a very good accuracy the topography of the moon and of Mars, when 80% of the Earth's ocean is still unknown, which you can see on this very patchy map representing the knowledge of the ocean. And with some consequences, some real consequences on safety of navigation. Well, the knowledge is very poor because the ocean is a challenging environment. And this is for two main reasons. First, the electromagnetic spectrum does not propagate very well in the sea, which drastically limit the surveying possibilities from satellite or airborne systems. So you have to go in situ with your ship to measure the ocean. As a consequence, the knowledge is progressing at the speed of boats, which is 10 knots, against 100 knots for aircraft, or even 10,000 knots for a satellite. I insist here that I'm talking mainly about bathymetric knowledge. Of course, satellite may be useful for other parameters of the ocean. And there comes the second problem you have here, which is that the sea might be rough. And so it's very challenging also to go at sea in situ to get the data. Well, fortunately, in situ techniques have progressed significantly in time. From the early lead line soundings to make point-by-point measurements, we have moved to very efficient and powerful echo sounders that provide very accurate depictions of the seafloor. And even in coastal areas, we can use some airborne LiDAR aboard an aircraft that may be used in coastal areas for surveying from 5 to 20 meters, depending on the clarity of the water. But progress remains slow. So how can we accelerate? From a technical perspective, a new breakthrough for hydrography is on its way, the one allowed by autonomous vehicles, autonomous underwater vehicles, unmanned surface vehicles, gliders are new assets for hydrography. Unmanned vehicles, in particular, mean more endurance at sea. It gives also better quality observations thanks to the hull design that can be more hydrodynamic because there is no need for shelter for a crew. the contribution of those new assets to knowledge might be decisive in a very near future. It is important to note here that the breakthrough in data acquisition will have to be accompanied by enhanced processing capacities, using automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to tackle this big data we will have to manage. Otherwise, we would miss something, because acquiring data is not an end in itself. The final objective being to provide products and services for the ever-growing needs of ocean stakeholders. To face data explosion with a tough constraint on human resource, we expect to divide by 10 the ratio of processing over acquisition time. From 1 to 3 in 2020, we expect to be at 1 to 0.3 by the end of the decade. So the technology is there to accelerate the ocean knowledge. That's good news, because we still have an ocean to measure. But addressing efficiently such a big issue requires more than science and technique. It requires to be organized at an international level. So how have we organized this? How can we improve it? In 2012, April, we signed a memorandum of understanding between the International Hydrographic Organization and DG Mare that gave a framework for interaction between the European Commission and the IHO. A major output of this initiative has been the EMODnet bathymetry, which is a European success, really. Indeed, EMODnet bathymetry consortium has gathered expertise from different sectors, including hydrographic offices, research institutes, SMEs. It has allowed gathering data to compute high-resolution bathymetric model and to build portals that give easy access to environmental information. In parallel, Europe has produced directives that are pushing member states to improve the knowledge of the ocean for the environment and security. I'm thinking here in particular of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive or Maritime Spatial Planning, or also the INSPIRE directive. Copernicus Marine Environment Monitoring Service is another example of efficient organization of Europe in the field of ocean forecasting. Back to EMODnet. EMODnet is doing very well for processing existing data, and this way it reveals implicit knowledge. But how do we improve the knowledge? How do we increase observation? These were the questions raised with the EMODnet coastal mapping project in 2015. And the purpose was to evaluate the interest of a European Union level synergy for acquisition of hydrographic data. And this is what we are talking about today. The conclusion was shared with the SEARICA Intergroup back in 2017. And here are those main conclusions, those recommendations. 3 of those, actually. Axis 1 was to set up a coordinated programs for data acquisition at maritime basin scale and set up the role of European Union. Axis 2 says the opportunities for bathymetric data acquisition in the framework of the European Union operational programs and funds, and ensure that those data be standardized and capitalized. And Axis 3 promote good practices to produce bathymetric hydrographic data from multiple sources, standardized and reused by all stakeholders for maritime policies. These recommendations are still valid and certainly an interesting input for today's agenda. So with a little organization effort, it might be possible to improve the knowledge. But the next question is coming, which is, how do we provide fit-for-purpose answers to users who have cross-cutting issues? It cannot be just depicting separately a few environmental parameters and not understanding how it interacts. This way, we will only have partial answers to complex problems. This is the need for interdisciplinary, which Director General Charlina Viceva expressed in the introduction of this session. Hopefully, Europe is coming up with a new paradigm for this, that is the digital twin ocean. The aim is to provide a holistic model of the ocean that will address several user communities' requirements. It can be used for simulation to provide products and services and also take into account a feedback loop of usage impact on the environment. That is where we need to go, not forgetting that quality control observation will remain the key to make this paradigm work. And again, citing the Charlina Viceva introductory speech, she mentioned that foundation of the knowledge is the capacity to observe the ocean. I strongly believe this is true. So that was my speech. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Laurent, for this interesting presentation. I think it was super cool and super interesting. So thanks a lot also for your time and for your work. Now we will move to the next speaker. I want to say before saying it that sorry for the pronunciation of the surname, but we have here with us Hans Brünig, Executive Director from the European Environment Agency, the EEA. So, Mr. Hans, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I assume that you can see my slides at this moment. Okay.
We can.
Very well. Well, in the interest of time, I will be brief and to the point, and I will talk about closing the information gap on the marine environment, which was addressed by the previous speakers, but place it explicitly in a policy setting where we know we will need strong transformative action if we want to reach European Green Deal and other objectives. The knowledge base that we use as an agency is framed in this systemic transitions need in the marine environment. And we provide a knowledge base that is founded on data and indicators. And from that, we provide services to the member states and to other actors in the European setting. On the one hand, we do more technical reports, for example, methodologies or information on how to transmit data under European legislation. But we, of course, also do assessments that are more integrated and more holistic and that link information across the European marine environment, like our marine messages. But on top of that, we place the marine environment in a broader European environmental state and outlook report every 5 years, where we look at the interactions with other parts of the European environment and climate agenda. Now, if we look at marine data, I think it has been abundantly addressed by the previous speakers. We know that we need to address information gaps, not as an excuse for acting now, but because indeed we need better information towards the future. And I think we can bundle that in 3 essential categories. On the one hand, greater coverage. It has been mentioned that indeed we have serious areas and parts of the oceanic environment that we don't know very well at this moment. Also better data continuity and integration, and that from drivers to responses, not only on the state of the marine environment, but in particular on what is causing that state and how we can respond and then integrate that data in a good way. And for that, we will indeed need to have better knowledge sharing. We've seen a lot of slides already with a lot of symbols on them, and yet there is an issue of knowledge sharing across the whole information chain. Now, we are trying to address that through WISE Marine, and WISE Marine is the European Marine Information System that is linking knowledge explicitly to the European policy setting. We work together with our EEA members and cooperating countries, which is 38 countries in Europe, also with the neighborhood south along the Mediterranean and along the Black Sea coast as well. We do that basically on the basis of the reporting that is done under European legislation and in collaboration with the European Commission, but also with the regional sea conventions that have been mentioned, and of course with others, most of them represented in the panel today. What we try to do through WISE Marine is to provide a knowledge platform and a data infrastructure that actually allows users to dive into the data and use that data for multiple purposes. We also make a connection not only with WISE, the Water Information System for Europe, but also with Climate Adapt and with BICE, the Biodiversity Information System for Europe, because we strongly believe that it's in understanding the interactions that we will really create the knowledge that is needed to address the drivers of what we are observing in the oceanic environment. That means that responding to the challenges ahead is a matter of collaboration, of better data, but explicitly also of data intelligence. And that means not only in artificial intelligence, we are working with that, but also intelligently linking the data that we have on the marine environment to what is happening on the shore, to linking it to policies that may not have an explicit link to the marine environment, and of course increasingly also to the whole challenge of the blue economy, of climate change, and of resource use. In order to do that, we collaborate with others, and I would like to mention explicitly the link that we have made with EMSA, the European Maritime Safety Agency, of course with the JRC. We work explicitly also with the Copernicus partners and then with others that I have mentioned before. So the challenge is not only more data. I think the real challenge is in using the data in a setting that motivates actors that have an impact on the marine environment to really address the fundamental issues that we are facing. It was said before, we are facing existential threats. We will not meet our goals if we do not address those threats also in the marine environment. That is obvious. Thank you very much.
Thanks for going to the point, as you said in the beginning, and for being that clear in your explanation. Now we will move to the next speaker. Is Ms. Fabienne Jacques, Policy Officer from the European Commission, from Management of Copernicus Marine Service. So, Fabienne, the floor is yours.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me and Copernicus to present and attend this important discussion for us. Very important, you will see my conclusion. So I will present very briefly what is the Copernicus program and why we need ocean observation. Okay, very shortly, so the Copernicus program, it's an EU space program for Earth observation. What is different from other EU space program in Copernicus is that, in fact, we try to have an end-to-end approach we are not launching only satellites, but our primary goal is to develop and to operate public services as public good, which are completely free and open to everyone, in order to provide people with information on the ocean. And this is more than data, this is information. Data are analyzed, merged, modeled, and so on, in order so that we can support decision making. So Copernicus is a fleet of satellites, 8 are flying, above 20 which are planned. We are using to develop our services in situ data, and you will see it. And then we have 6 operational services, one of them really addressing the marine environment. A second one addressing the climate change with the ocean part of climate change. And all of that, this is really to support tailored processes at national, European or local scale. Very important for us to reach this scale. So what is this precisely? So behind you will see something running. This is the kind of products that we can deliver every day. So ocean information for us is a public good in Copernicus, and therefore we have set up what we call the Marine Environment Service, which is in fact, in short, an EU ocean forecasting and ocean climate center. So we are providing every day real-time observation of the ocean parameters, and we have 170 products which are delivered, observations, but also 10 days forecast of these parameters, and the climate records, meaning the past, in fact, of what was the ocean in the past decades. What are the kind of parameters that you can find? This is about temperature, sea level, currents, but also biogeochemistry, content in plankton, in nutrients, in optical properties, many sea ice parameters to monitor the Arctic. All of that is provided and monitored every day and forecasted. From that week, you can also find in the marine service what we call ocean monitoring indicators, which is knowledge and information produced monthly about the trends, where we are in terms of ice melting, in terms of ocean heat content that can be an indicator for possible tropical cyclone, in terms of sea level rise, for sure, that we monitor monthly. And we publish that internationally, annually, in the Ocean State Report, which is an international report published in the Journal of Ocean Operational Oceanography. To use it concretely, this is, first of all, even if it's global and international, this is first of all to serve EU policies and EU citizens and administration, institutions, scientists, and companies. And therefore, we have a global forecasting center, but we have also regional ocean forecasting centers per sea basin, so that we are close to these users, and we are close also to the phenomenon to be monitored. Will it be in the Baltic, Arctic, or Med Sea? And we deliver information for 12 sectors of activities, ranging from energy, fisheries and aquaculture, education, climate change, shipping, and so on and so forth. And you can find all of that in fact, online. And behind you can see, you will see very quickly the art beating, in fact, with this image. Sorry, next slide. Okay, I would like next slide. Yeah, very quickly, which kind of application, which kind of use for this information? We serve plenty of people because it's completely open. We have 28,000 regular users connecting to the website to use our data. So examples, for example, we have CMA CGM, a very big shipping company, using it to reduce their fuel consumption when they by optimizing their shipping routes using ocean currents. It's used by Météo France to predict the sargassum appearance close to their French islands, Virgin Islands. We have also little companies developing a citizen application for plastic drifts. This is for citizen science, but also for surfing, for beaching and so on. This is heavily used by people developing ocean energy, renewable energy power plants, because we provide wave forecasts, we monitor the tides, we are providing the currents, the salinity, thermal energy, etc., up to what can be done in terms of fisheries management or aquaculture society or exploitation, because they use water quality information, pollution indicators, or waves, for example. So this is very briefly what we do, but to achieve it, this is something which is extremely complex. This is based on mathematical equation of the ocean behavior, the physics, the biogeochemistry, and in the future, the biology, like ICES can do. And so we want to have this information at surface, but we want it in depth, and we also monitor it in time, because it's like weather. We want to know what will be tomorrow. So this is something very complex, and to do so we use satellites, because satellites provide us a global observation every day. It's many times a day, so it's easy. But we cannot use it alone. In fact, the satellite, if we don't have ground truths provided by in situ observation system, and buoys, gliders, profilers, Argo floats, drifters. In fact, we cannot calibrate our satellites. We need the ground truth, because with this ground truth, we will assimilate this data, and then we will have a forecast which is much more precise, accurate compared to reality. And second, because the in situ data enable us to validate what we developed mathematically and calibrate the sensors that we have on board our satellites. So in fact, we cannot do all what you have just seen with the examples, nice models, forecasts, climate records, sea level rise, without ocean observation. And where we stand is a tricky situation, in fact. In the Copernicus program, we have bet that we can make Earth observation fully operational and sustained in time, meaning that we will fly many satellites until 2035, 2040. We committed already for a very long time the best state-of-the-art sensing, but we don't have the same sustainability for our in situ ocean observation. So it means that we are relying a lot on research, on national volunteers, association like ICES having, or Eurogoose collecting data, sharing this data, but this is mandatory that we develop a long-term vision for this ocean observation, so that us on our side as main user, we will have both the satellite and the in situ, which are sustained, so that we can provide our ocean forecasting and our climate records for the decades to come. And in the context of blue economy recovery, in the context of climate change, this is essential, because our planet is blue. And I think life is inside also for us. So that's why this is really my main message. We are a big user of ocean observation. The quality is essential, but the sustainability is really critical. And I will just finalize with a last message. So that's what we do in Copernicus. That's how it can be used in order to monitor the changes and the sea level rise, the millimeters every year that is moving, the melting in the Arctic and so on. This is for everyone, from the general public to NGOs, business, policymakers, and so on. But I think it's very important to get organized in Europe. We have assets, we have needs, but we have also to do that also internationally and link with all the international programs. And therefore, in addition to Copernicus, we have just started a project with DG RTD, DG DEFIS, but also DG Marine support, because they are leading this ocean observation consultation in order to link internationally with other partners, with a project funded by the FPI instruments called EU for Ocean Ops, which goes and contributes also to these common objectives that we have in Europe and abroad. That's it for me.
Thank you, Fabienne, for another amazing presentation and for the work that you are doing through Copernicus. Now we have 3 more speakers. The next one is Mr. Neil McDonough. I don't know if I express it word really well, but he's Director of Policy, Innovation and Research from the Marine Institute in Ireland and Chair of the European Joint Programming Initiative on Healthy and Productive Seas and Oceans. So, Mr. Neil, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Can I check if you can hear me okay?
We can.
Very good, thank you. So, as I say, thank you for the invitation to participate in the panel in this event this afternoon to SEARICA and also to DG Mare for this important initiative in relation to ocean observation. As you say, I'm wearing 2 hats this afternoon in terms of my participation. Firstly, I'm representing my own institution, the Marine Institute in Ireland. We are Ireland's National Institute for Marine Research and Development, and we provide our government, industry and other stakeholders with a range of scientific, technical and advisory services to support economic development, policy making, regulation and sustainable management of our marine environment. We also manage and implement ocean observing infrastructures and programs. In particular, we operate our two national research vessels, a national data buoy network, tide gauge network, and several other observing systems and collaborate internationally on those as well. The other hat I'm wearing this afternoon is as chair of the management board of JPI Oceans. And JPI Oceans is an intergovernmental platform. We have 20 countries participating, ministries and organizations involved in funding marine research in each of those countries, collaborating in terms of aligning our research investments and participating in joint actions in relation to shared challenges around seas and oceans. So again, this initiative is highly relevant in both cases. In terms of this afternoon, first of all, a lot of very, very good information and points have been made by the previous speakers, and I hope to build on some of those without repeating things. And I do want to make some very specific, in fact, 5 specific points in my remarks. I think the case has already been made very eloquently by previous speakers for why we need to undertake ocean observation, why it's so important in terms of delivering the Green Deal, achieving good environmental status in line with the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, ensuring we continue to benefit from ecosystem goods and services from the marine environment, and supporting a sustainable blue economy and a transition of the blue economy to climate neutrality. I think those cases are clear. What I would like to do is focus on the real question at hand, which is the initiative by DG Mare to bring forward improved coordination, a framework for improved coordination in terms of our ocean observing efforts in Europe. And I'll begin by perhaps just taking a little look backwards, if I may, in recent history. Back in 2008, the European Marine Board and Eurogoose produced a document which set out a vision for what was called EMODNet, the European Marine Observation and Data Network. And that vision really looked at set a vision for an end-to-end system of systems, from observation to information, the full value chain of monitoring and observing the marine environment and using the information to make policy to support blue economy, etc. Subsequently, the Commission took forward the EMODNet initiative as we know it now under the Marine Knowledge 2020 strategy. And EMODNet, as we know it, is dealing with data and downstream products and services. And it's a really important initiative that is now 10 years old and is embedded in the system and provides a really valuable centralized European portal for marine data and products and services across a range of areas from bathymetry, chemistry, biology, physics, etc., human activities. The part that is more difficult to address is the actual collection of data, and that's been referred to previously by several speakers, because it's expensive. Ocean observing is expensive. It requires putting vessels, equipment, buoys, gliders, etc., particularly in situ observing. Again, I commend the Commission now for taking this initiative to address that component. And there's no doubt it needs to be addressed, because at European level, we have an extremely complex system. And it is fragmented. We do need to look at coordination, at reducing duplication, at reducing fragmentation, and looking at synergies throughout the system. In the context of those comments, I want to make 5 particular points, quite specific points in that respect. So the first one is that we need to map the system, the observing system, the data collection component. I say that because to actually make decisions and about how we better coordinate this system, we need to understand the system itself. I've never, in my experience, seen a fully comprehensive map of what our ocean observing system of systems looks like in Europe, but probably because it's an extremely complex thing to do. But I do believe that if we're to take this forward, we need to undertake that analysis. The second point I want to make is that we need to build on existing programs. We do have a system in place. We do have as I've said, a very complex system in place, which is made up of a range of long-term monitoring programs, short-term project-based initiatives, regional sea conventions and programs, etc. It is made up of multiple different parts. But we do have initiatives that are already working to try and improve coordination in this space. And in particular, I want to refer to the European Ocean Observing System, EOS, which has been also mentioned by previous speakers. And this is an initiative which, again, the European Marine Board and Eurogoose have been taking forward over a number of years now. A lot of background work has been done in terms of trying to bring the key actors together and form a sort of a framework, not a new system, but as George said in his comments earlier, an umbrella that better coordinates the components that we have in place already, that can allow us to understand the system better, to identify the gaps and create those synergies. So I would emphasize and recommend that we should build on those programs already. Just if I may, to mention JPI Oceans, which is also active in this space. In terms of EOS, we are chairing the resource forum for EOS as it stands, but also many of our initiatives are relevant in terms of the ocean observing capacity we have in Europe and improving coordination between member states, including a past initiative on European calibration sensor networks, and we have a knowledge hub at the moment on sea level rise. The third point I want to raise is in relation to the need to bring member states on board this kind of progress, because I refer to the recent experience when we were completing in my institute the questionnaire from DG Mare, and in one of the questions asks what is the level of investment or expenditure in your member state on ocean observing. We don't have a figure for that. We don't have a number. We could get one, but it would take a good deal of analysis and mapping our own national system. And that is because, again, at national level, there are different actors, different ministries and departments with competence for different required parts of the system. So again, to make progress in taking forward better coordination at EU level, we need to bring the member states with us, and those who have the responsibility for managing and implementing the system and using the users of the system, let's say. So that would be my third point, is that any future framework in this process needs to co-create with users at member state level to ensure that it has buy-in from member states. The fourth point I want to make is that we do have, firstly, I would say we have a lot of data. We have a huge amount of data. It is not as if we're lacking observations, but obviously what we need to achieve is making the right observations in the right places at the right time, measuring the right things to fulfill our needs. So addressing gaps is going to be really important. And yes, there are spatial and temporal gaps, which the mapping exercise I mentioned earlier will help to address. But we also need to address gaps in what we measure, because there is a natural tendency to measure the things that we have capability of measuring. So if you look at the list of essential ocean variables, the physical variables, and by and large the chemical and biogeochemical variables are very much in terms of readiness levels at a mature level. Whereas if you look at the biological components, they're very much at concept or pilot level, because they're much more difficult to measure in a systematic way, and we're at a very early stage in terms of technologies, etc., to help us measure the biological component of the essential ocean variables. So we should pay attention not just to measuring what we can measure, but to measure the things we need to measure, and bringing forward our capabilities in those areas and prioritizing that. And that leads to my final point, which is around which is a linked point, which is around technology. Previous presenters have very clearly demonstrated the importance of technology and some of the new technologies that are coming on stream in terms of autonomous vehicles and platforms. This will be critical in terms of reducing costs going forward. If we're the future is absolutely based around improving our technological capacity to measure our marine environment from coasts to deep oceans. Two points in relation to this. Firstly, there is a danger of losing some potentially very interesting technologies, whether it be new sensors being developed, by relying completely on the market to bring those technologies through to actual production. Some of these, there may not be the market pull for them, but we still can benefit enormously from them. How do we support those technologies and make sure that they are made available and brought through to application without always having to rely on the market? The second point is the human component. We must not forget the human component. Human capacities are still very important. And I mentioned earlier the biological essential ocean variables. We still need the human capacity element there. For example, our taxonomic expertise is something that we're probably not supporting at the level we need to support going forward. If we're to understand ecosystems and food webs and so on, we need to have the human capacity and the expertise available to assist us in that capacity. So to conclude, I've made sort of 5 very specific points, if I may, in relation to this initiative by DG Mare, which I think are very important, and I'll just list them again before I finish. Number 1 is map the system comprehensively in detail to enable decision making and progress. The second is to build on existing programs and initiatives, most notably the European Ocean Observing System. The third is to co-create with member states and users any new EU framework to improve coordination in ocean observing. The fourth is obviously to address gaps, but in particular to focus on improving our capacity to measure things that we cannot measure yet, or at a very early stage of measuring, not just measuring what we can. And the fifth is Support our technological advancement, but don't forget the human capabilities. I'll conclude there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for your schematic presentation with the points and the good ideas that you expressed here. Now we will move to the next speaker, is Mr. Roberto Montanari. He's coordinator of Bologna Charter Initiative, Emilia-Romagna region, and Directorate General for Territorial and Environmental Care from the Department of Soil and Coast Protection and Land Reclamation. So, Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alicia. Can you see the presentation and can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon to all from Italy, and thanks to the organizer, the SEARICA Intergroup and the EG Mare, for the opportunity given, and to the CRPM to the kind invitation in bringing the experience of the regions in this panel downstream to the public consultation. So I'm bringing the experience, but also pointing out which could be and which is the role of regions. As know, the regional administration, coastal regional administration, but their institutional missions in policy implementation is one of the key actors in the puzzle of ocean observation, both as data user, data information users and providers. It is clear that in the composition of this puzzle, given its complexity, it requires the coordinated collaboration of any competent actor, necessarily answering to the to a multi-level approach in governance and coordination with the well-defined roles and added value bringing in this frame from the EU and national to regional and local users and stakeholder level. So I will try in a few slides to give now a glance on the role of the regional administration dealing with land-sea interactions within this multi-level frame, starting from the experience of my region, obviously, but also widening the view in using and measuring coastal and marine data for multiple purposes, and also giving some indication on some concrete experience and some tips I hope useful in the frame of the public consultation. Starting from all the Emilia-Romagna is the promoter and the coordinator of the Bologna Charter Initiative, involving today about 30 Mediterranean regions in the frame and with the support of CPMR and Inter-Mediterranean Commission. The Bologna Charter developed an action plan containing action lines, some in particular on knowledge development for the ICZM and MSP. And along with the action lines and strategies contained in the action plan, developed together with the partners of the Bologna Charter several interregional cooperation projects, including coastal and maritime space integrated management and development of knowledge bases and platform for the purposes of ICZM MSP. The region is also the coordinator of the Italian regions for the SEARICA Pillar 3 on environmental quality, and is also a component of the thematic steering group of the same pillar with the Ministry of Environment. Together with the member partners of the Bologna Charter, we collaborated in the formation of the Blue Med Strategic Research Innovation Agenda, giving contribution for the strand key enabling knowledge for the Mediterranean, and with a particular focus on the hazard and protection of coastal areas in the Mediterranean, with particular focus on data observing for planning and integrated management. My region is also component of a national steering committee on the National Board of Coastal Erosion, together with the Ministry of Environment and the 15 coastal regions of Italy. We produced the national guidelines for the coastal protection and dealing with also with the effects of the climate change, together with ISPRA and GNRAC, that is a national group of universities and researchers on research on the environment, on coastal environment, and the also the TNEC, the National Board on Coastal Erosion, collaborate in the National Plan for the Space Economy, defining needs for coastal regions on coastal bird services, with Copernicus services, remote sensing services about coastal observation and monitoring for management purposes. Then it is also a component of the technical committee, National Technical Committee on the MSP, together with the Ministry of Infrastructure, that is the main, the national authority for the MSP, and also other ministries involved, and regions. Here, the regions have the the role of provision of coastal and marine space, maritime space data for their competence, and is also contributing to the knowledge framework composition and also to the planning consultation processes. Emilia-Romagna takes also part in the subcommittee of data and in the subcommittee of Adriatic Basin. Then the region is also a member of the Technical Scientific Committee of Ecomondo, that is the main fair European one of the main European fair on the environmental and key energy issues, together with the committee, the Ministry of Environment, the National Board, the ISPRA and GNRAC, organizing annual events, conferences on the coastal and marine environment on the blue growth themes. The joint action plan of the Bologna Charter is a technical document that defines strategies and action to reach the objective of the policy document, dealing with and basing its actions on main three pillars: knowledge, research, and monitoring on the status of evolution of the Mediterranean coastal areas, integrated planning for sustainable development of coastal and maritime space, and coastal works and solution for climate change adaptation needs and resilience on coastal systems. This is developed in 4 main strategic themes, including 12 joint action lines, 15 major coastal projects, and 7 monitoring infrastructure projects that are the basis on which we developed and still developing international interregional cooperation with the several programming of the European Union for the development of these issues on within these projects. The regions, as I said, are both end users of observational data and providers of detailed knowledge bases. In specific for the sector I deal with, I'm talking about for the onshore ambit on topobathymetric, geological, geomorphological, and geognostic data, data on water quality, status of littorals and of protection works, erosions and coastal dynamics, and meteor marine climate. Inland, we operate on the construction of scenarios and marine flood risk maps, complying with the flood directive, contributing to the hydrographic basin planning on the coastal areas, climate change effects impacts map, geological and geomorphological maps, and evolution and dynamics and evolution maps. Offshore, we focus in particular for our sector in the characterization of sand deposits on the continental shelf, with several surveys of several parameters devoted to the sizing of volumes suitable and available for coastal nourishment and monitoring the exploitation of these sand deposits and also the effects of this exploitation on the marine environment. There is an example of this kind of collection and database system in our website concerning InSand database, of course. We also developed within the Porto di Mare project, an Adrian project, the geoportal of Adriatic Ionian region, the GAIR, and that is available now. The Porto di Mare project is just completed, and also a regional database on sea uses that now we are using and implementing also within the National Committee on MSP. This is just a glance on the geoportal of Adriatic Ionian region. I think that could be of interest. As you see, we developed this together with the partnership of the Adriatic Ionian region, a structure including by now at the moment more than 5,000 layers of information, organized in 7 modules and with specific innovative tools for map creation and analysis for ICZM MSP purposes. This is one of the key elements of this geoportal. And to facilitate the use for any user of this portal, we provided also 8 interfaces to interact with data and produce maps and make space analysis. This is just a glance of the welcome page of the geoportal of the GAIR, showing also the 22 data sets now available on the portal. And why we need all this data, why we have completed this project with this aim, Porto di Mare, but also the previous projects focusing on this matter, because first of all, as a region, but Emilia-Romagna, but also other regions are obviously involved both as analyzing and using observation data on the coastal and marine environment, but also we are active on making observation as well as funding observation. So we can interact with the platform, both taking from them and and also giving, providing information. And one for which scope we need this information for the sector I am working in. I highlighted this one that are the main field for which the ocean observation is essential, that is for the coastal protection, adapting to the climate change, the implementation of early warning system, and the planning of new coastal and offshore activity. But the data obviously are used for many other purposes, as ecosystem understanding and protection, complying with environmental measures for fishery management, also with dealing with algal blooms that in the Adriatic is one of the threatening factors for the environment. But there are also some uncertainties that we need to narrow, and concerning in particular, for our point of view, the magnitude and the frequency of extreme events having to do with geohazards, coastal risks, impact on the coasts, other data concerning ocean circulation affecting water temperature, coastal currents, and also high water phenomena that sometimes in combination with extreme events can make can give effects, very important effects on land with marine ingression, and ice melting, also having to do with geohazard, coastal risk, and sea level rise, and also about the concept, but also how can we measure coastal resilience, so the self-adaptation capacity degree of coastal system and ecosystems on the climate change effects. So concluding, what we can suggest or see or propose to focus about new technologies or initiative that could be further implemented or more widely used. One point is obviously the point of new sensors or new detection systems that would be needed, for instance, to evaluate with more accuracy the solid transport along the terminal sections of river and also along shore. The field of surveys with LiDAR technology, airborne with water vehicles, would be more widely used and possibly implemented in a degree of accuracy for coastal bathymetric campaign, and drove also to a further lowering of cost if committed by a central authority, national or European. We see also the opportunity of the development and further use of an implementation of the GAIR platform. It is expected to be used and further implemented by the partners of the Adriatic and Ionian region, but it is also can be possibly transferred or taken as an example for the implementation of other maritime basin platforms. And just another point on technologies as an example. This technology called ecosystem-oriented plan for sediment management could be more widely used. It is a submerged ejector device and bypass system that constitute a new approach and technology for a continuous and more sustainable management of sedimentation in port area and possibly also in artificial basin, aimed at overcoming the traditional dredging operation. So the change of paradigm is don't wait that the problem grow up in the sedimentation, for instance in the port entrance, but make an action, install a system that can manage continuously and avoid the sedimentation where the sedimentation is not appreciated. This technology has been already used in two different projects. One is a LIFE project, another is an Interreg project in two different situations and conditions, and gave good result. And was also the focus of the EcoMed port project, startup action of BlueMed, concerning the feasibility studies of application of this kind of technology in some ports of Tunisia and Lebanon. So I've completed now, and thank you for the attention. Obviously, the experience I illustrated, I brought, is referred to the specific field of action that the sector I deal with, mainly concerning land-sea interaction in physical environment. But regional administration as whole also deal with a number of other sectors: water quality, air quality, maritime transport, fishery and aquaculture, etc., in which there are similarly further experience in using ocean observation data that is essential for the implementation of the related policies. So thank you again for the opportunities. Here are my reference for possible further contacts in the frame of the CPMR, and I'm available for all the open discussion afterward. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto, for this presentation and for this complete idea of what you have been explaining. And now we will move to the last speaker before the Q&A session. Last but not least, she is Ms. Maya Markovnik-Gostelak, Executive Director of the European Maritime Safety Agency, the EMSA. So, Maya, the floor is yours. You need to unmute. Now.
Good afternoon, and from Lisbon. Knowing that I'm the last panelist today, and knowing that it's already a late afternoon, I will do my best to be as smooth as possible. So, Ms. Holmes, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure to address you all today and to give you a short perspective from an EU agency which has the maritime affairs at the center of our mandate. Based on that mandate and on our mission and on our strategic priorities at EMSA, we work towards a safer, more secure, more environmentally friendly shipping landscape in Europe. And we contribute to the implementation of the major EU policy priorities in that domain. Earth observation products are therefore for us a high-value raw material, which we use to develop operational services in maritime safety, maritime security, and maritime environment protection, which we provide to our stakeholders, the EU member states, other EU agencies like Frontex and EFCA, and the third countries. In that area, or in the area of safety and security, we produce an integrated maritime picture, which brings together information from different sources, including Earth observation, and thus turning us into the EU eyes on the sea, as we like to call ourselves. Member states use the Earth observation capabilities through the Copernicus Maritime Surveillance System for surveillance of the large sea areas, and more as an additional tool for search and rescue purposes. Integrated maritime services are also used to support security-related missions worldwide, including EU NAVFOR missions in Somalia to combat piracy, as well as operations of PIA and IRINI in the Mediterranean. They also have the potential to be used elsewhere, including the recently announced pilot action for the coordinated maritime presence in the Gulf of Guinea. We also support MAUCAN in the anti-drug trafficking activities. Another important set of services based on the Earth observation and more related to the subject of today's debate are related to the environmental portfolio. Our flagship project, CleanSeaNet, is the European satellite-based oil spill and vessel detection capability, which offers assistance to participating states to identify and trace oil pollution at the sea surface, support cleanup operations, and contribute to the identification of polluters. Only last year, CleanSeaNet detected 630 separate confirmed oil pollution incidents in Europe. More importantly, CleanSeaNet raises awareness and has a clear deter effect. As the result, a number of operational spills has been reduced every year from the last past decade. Although we primarily provide the services in Europe, we also support third countries. For example, last July, there was a serious oil pollution in the sensitive environmental area on the coral reef off coast of Mauritius, and EMSA provided the satellite images to support counter-pollution and salvage operation. Another important aspect that I would like to highlight here is the satellite-based communications. This is essential to another of our flagship projects, remotely piloted aircraft systems, or RPASs. We provide these services to the member states and other partners for maritime surveillance and also for the control of air emissions from shipping. 2020 was a unique year in so many ways. For Earth observation services, it was a year in which we delivered the highest number of satellite images ever, more than 15,000. Obviously, manned surveillance flight decreased, so satellite images filled the gap. That, combined with the raised demand in the maritime emergency context, requires us to further strengthen our capacity. In that regard, we are working together with DG DEFIS to ensure an adequate response. Fast reaction times and 24/7 availability are the key to success in this area. For highly technologically driven services like Earth observation, it is of utmost importance to continuously look in the future. In that context, new technologies like high-altitude pseudo-satellites could enable better, more enhanced surveillance capabilities. In addition, when we have recently prepared the first European Maritime Transport Environmental Report, together with the European Environmental Agency, the areas where there is a clear gap of data has been identified. Therefore, together with the European Space Agency, we are exploring the possibilities to further deploy Earth observation services as a part of our environmental portfolio, being that in the area of marine litter, plastic pollution, or transfer of aquatic organisms. Now, they say the picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is surely worth many more. So let me, at the end, show you a little more about our Earth observation services in this short video. Thank you very much, and please run the video. I'm in your hand now.
Getting a comprehensive overview of human activity at sea is a demanding task. Risks and challenges reach, many times, further than the eye can see. The regular use of space technology has proven to be a cost-effective, reliable and sustainable solution for maritime surveillance. There are practical examples of how this technology helps on a daily basis. Space technologies have a significant contribution to the sustainability of maritime transport, monitoring the seas for detecting pollution and illegal activities. By combining information from different systems, EMSA has become the EU's eyes on the sea, turning into the primary provider of surveillance and communication services with the aim to ensure maritime safety and security. Accessing data from over 15 different satellites, EMSA's Earth observation services provide a wealth of information for two main EU surveillance programs. CleanSeaNet detects soil spills and polluters, and Copernicus Maritime Surveillance provides a better awareness of human activity at sea. These two services combined deliver almost 14,000 satellite images per year, serving a wide range of user communities. With new sensors, new capacities and improved communication systems, space technologies offer a better, faster and more comprehensive global maritime picture. For a fast delivery of satellite images, EMSAs, Earth Observation Services, rely partly on the Space Data Highway, known as EDRS. This is the first laser communication geostationary constellation that gives real-time access to data collected from oceans far away. When the remotely piloted aircraft systems are flying away from the coast, they need to switch to beyond radio line-of-sight communications via satellite. SATCOM allows to cover large maritime areas and the transfer of large amounts of data. Satellite AIS enables data acquisition outside the range of terrestrial AIS network coverage, including polar areas, complementing global maritime situational awareness picture. The upcoming VHF Data Exchange System, or VDES, aims to improve communication between ship and shore, building upon satellite AIS technology, one of the examples of our successful cooperation with the European Space Agency. Satellite capabilities combined with other maritime data and growing digitalization, like artificial intelligence, helps to pursue our major goal: ensuring safe, secure, and sustainable maritime activities in the European Union and beyond.
Thank you, Maya. I think that was it with the video. So we have come to an end with the panel. I don't know if any people of the public has any questions to raise. You can raise your hand or write it directly to the chat. I have not seen any. I have seen some conversations in the chat, but not any question. You can also raise your hand. I'm checking it right now. So we can give 1 minute to people if someone wants to say something. I'm checking it a bit fast. So any hand raised? So since we are out of time, I think all the speakers have given their no questions. Okay. So since the speakers has given us a really good approach and have done a really good job with their presentations and their comments, I think that everything was quite clear. If not, I think that they have given us their emails, or at some point for sure we can reach them to ask the questions if you later come with them. So just to end up with the concluding remarks, I'm sorry to say that we don't have more time because we are out of time. I want to thank all the participants again. Thanks a lot for your contributions, and I'm sure that all of us have learned a lot. I sure have done. Also, I want to thank to the public who have connected and that for sure have learned also a lot. And finally, and once again, I want to thank the team of SEARICA for the organization. I think that it has gone smoothly and it would not be half possible without them. So I think that we also need to thank them. So I hope we can repeat this soon in person. In the meantime, I hope that we all keep safe and healthy. And that's it from my side. So have a good afternoon and hope you have enjoyed this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye to all.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice afternoon.
Bye, Corinne.